Welcome back. It is estimated there are about 50,000 Americans in need of a critical heart transplant. Right now, there are even 3,000 people on a national waiting list. But sadly, some will die before they're ever able to get a new heart. Now, there's a move to try to improve these numbers, especially in our area. And joining us to explain that is Dr. Brian Lima. He's Director of Heart Transplant Surgery at Northwell Health. And welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So what's changing? First of all, first explain what is the national waiting list? How do people get on it?
So once someone's gotten to the point where their advanced heart failure can't be treated with medications, they're evaluated for their candidacy for a heart transplant. And if they're deemed a candidate, then they're put on the wait list, and depending on how sick they are, is where they'll be placed on that wait list.
Now, New York in the past and this region has complained that they've been sort of shortchanged in that process, right? Because it's also very important to make sure it's fair for everyone, right? Explain what the problem is there.
Unfortunately, as far as wait list times and the amount of transplants per capita, per population, New York is the lowest in the United States.
For organ donations?
Organ donations
and heart?
And heart. If you look specifically at heart transplant, it's the longest wait list times in the United States.
So let me see if I get this right. Does that mean that we were getting a lesser amount because we were donating a lesser amount, and that was part of the reasoning behind it? That, you know, well, if people in your state give hearts, then they move up. Really? That's how it works?
Well, I think it's multifactorial. Number one, we're one of the most heavily populated regions in the United States, and even though there are a fair number of transplant centers, there may not be enough. And so towards that end, you know, starting a brand new heart transplant program, the first and only on Long Island, may help alleviate that to some degree.
You mean at Northwell Health?
At Northwell Health.
Okay, so you're kidding me. There's not enough heart transplant centers in the New York area? I would think we had more doctors and hospitals than anywhere.
Well, I mean, New York City, the metropolitan area, is just its own unique thing. I mean, it's so heavily populated, and you know, for square miles, probably has more transplant centers than anywhere in the United States, but probably still not enough.
So then what's going to change now about these national rules? Because and who changes them? I mean, who comes together to decide how to change them, and what will change?
So basically, experts in the field convene a governing body to try to sort out what are some of the barriers to, you know, why heart transplant rates are so low. And part of it has to do with how well actually mechanical hearts pumps have come along.
Vast improvement, right?
Right. Well, 10 years ago, when the new system was introduced back then, no one predicted that these mechanical heart pumps were going to do this well. And so now, unfortunately, you'll have patients that are stable with these heart pumps that are allocated at the same level on the wait list as a patient who's not eligible, who's literally dying in the ICU. And so the thought behind changing the system was to try to really get the hearts towards the sickest of the sick first to help decrease the wait time.
So has it been changed officially yet? Is it still being discussed? And when will we start to see any impact from that?
It's already been discussed and planned, and the change is set to take place early 2018.
What difference will that make?
Well, we hope that we're going to see New York at least get to a level playing field with the rest of the United States. We'll see increased donation rates, increased transplant rates. The total number of transplants, I think, in this area will increase too. So I think that's the anticipated, or the goal we hope for.
I think we've all heard anecdotally how this works. I mean, is it really like sometimes you even see in movies where somebody might be in New York and the heart becomes available in the Midwest somewhere, and they jump on a plane, put a heart in a box of ice, and bring it to that person? I mean, is it really like that?
Well, really, it's only limited by the amount of time we can really have a heart out of the body. So you're looking at about 4 hours. So by the time the heart is removed from the donor and sewn into the recipient, you ideally would like that time frame to be about 4 hours.
So considering travel time, they really need to be within an hour or two of where you are.
You could maybe get by with a 3-hour flight time if you're really tight on either.
That's fast.
On both ends. But but that actually opens it up to the Midwest, as you said, from here.
So it is like that. So, you know, it's such a desperate situation for people who are in this. How does somebody even try to figure out if they're having problems with their heart, whether or not they're a candidate for something like this? How do you even move forward that? They did a survey question. People said they had no idea what they would do.
Sure. Well, hopefully the start is having a primary care physician who can kind of steer patients towards escalating to maybe seeing a heart failure specialist. But things like shortness of breath or fatigue with just even minimal exertion, swelling in the limbs, those are classic signs that the heart may not be working well.
Now, why does New York have such a low organ donation rate?
Well, I think It's multifactorial. I think, you know, we could do a better job of trying to get folks out there to register to become donors. I know at Northwell Health we had a dedicated effort to do that. So part of it is maybe doing a better job on our end to promote that and get folks out there to register.
Yeah, that's part of why we do, you know,
and
shows like this.
Exactly.
Yeah, because, you know, we don't know a lot about this, and that's why we're trying to learn about it. And then, you know, I wonder sometimes about maybe if these rules are changed and New York starts to do well, we're going to hear from the rest of the country that it's not fair that no hearts are going to New York?
Well, I guess we'll see how it happens. But, you know, I think as long as things get to become what I believe a more fair distribution, we'll see.
Well, who are the I mean, is it like people who are in auto accidents, just people who die naturally? Because actually the heart has to be in good condition. They have to have died from some other reason, right?
Right. So, unfortunately, you know, drug overdoses, motor vehicle accidents, things like that. You could have folks that have strokes from high blood pressure and bleeding, things like that.
But the heart is not affected.
Right. So part of, before we go out to get a heart, we have to be really sure that it's a good heart. And so there's a number of tests that are performed to assess whether it's a good, well-functioning heart.
So now you're moving ahead over at Northwell Health. What will we see over there? You're putting together this program, right?
So we hope to go live next month or early December. And we anticipate hopefully at least 10 heart transplants in the first year, but it really all depends on how quickly we can get this wait list put together and get the word out, and to the wonderful people of Long Island who for many years have had to trek the long road all the way into Manhattan.
Yeah.
So,
well, now there'll be a place on Long Island for that.
There'll be a place on Long Island.
And that must be like very time-consuming surgery, no? Heart transplants?
It is. It's usually in the middle of the night, at really inopportune times, but it could be anywhere from 4 to 8 hours, depending on what you're dealing with.
Well, it's life-saving, and we thank you for what you're doing there, and we'll see how these new rules have any impact, if at all. I know you're hoping they will.
I hope they will.
Dr. Brian Lima with Northwell Health, thanks for this important information. We'll see how it plays out. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
And when we return, just seconds from being run down by a speeding train, a driver is pulled from her car by an on-the-spot first responder.